Hey everyone, and welcome to another Risky Business product demo. My name's Patrick Gray. In these sponsored demos, we take a look at vendor kit to see what they're trying to sell you out there in userland. And today we are chatting with Josh Camdew, who is the Chief Executive and Co-founder of Sublime Security. Sublime Security is a email security platform, I guess, traditional email security. So you think about the sort of secure email gateways we had back in the day, which, gradually were replaced with SaaS services, a la Proofpoint and whatnot. Sublime Security is really designed to be the next generation of that. And, it wouldn't be a next generation platform without heavy use of AI. And that is what Josh is here to talk about today. Sublime is really using a lot of agentic AI to automate away so much of the tedious work that is involved in, keeping email secure. So, Josh, thank you for joining me. And where do we start when walking through the platform?
Yeah, well, I love starting with our taxonomy. And so we basically created our own taxonomy that's similar to like MITRE ATT&CK. We call it the email threat framework, but it's like very purpose built for describing attacker behavior. And this just gives you a sense of A, how we think about the threat landscape, but B, how does Sublime actually work and how does it do the detection of attacks? And so we've got three categories in our taxonomy. The first you're seeing here called attack types. This is ultimately what the attacker's objective is in the attacks that they're conducting. So we've got your usual suspects here, like BEC fraud to malware ransomware delivery. We've got our second category, which is tactics and techniques. So this is like, what is the attacker actually doing to conduct their attacks? And the last is the detection method. So from a detection methodology standpoint, what's Sublime doing to detect the bad? So things from natural language understanding to QR code analysis. The really cool thing about this from a practitioner perspective is the level of verifiability that you have in what your coverage is. So every one of these categories, you can actually pivot and see the detection coverage. So there's no like kind of black box, hand wavy stuff here. You can literally pop open the hood and you can see exactly how Sublime does the detection. And so this is obviously, very much like how the sausage gets made. Most of our customers don't look at like detections or anything like that, but it gives you a sense of how Sublime works under the hood. So for an attack like this, this is like a traditional iced ID delivery mechanism where they're sending a PDF attachment. We'll send that to our file explosion engine. We'll run an OCR scanner. We'll pass it through our natural language understanding classifier. We'll leverage behavioral analysis. And that's ultimately one of the things that we do to detect bad. So that's like at a super high level how Sublime works under the hood.
I guess one thing to point out, right, is as I said earlier, one of the reasons you developed Sublime was to have that level of inspectability. And that was great for companies that had detection teams and whatever. But then you've got the platform to a position where you can, customers can just run it and they don't need to crack the hood, right? So that's been the journey, I guess, of the platform, right?
Yeah, and now the architecture, because Sublime has that layer of detection and that domain specific language that we use to describe attacker behavior, it's allowed us to build a really powerful ecosystem of agentic capabilities on top of Sublime to do things like autonomous detection and response, to do things like autonomous analysis and threat hunting. There's all these really cool things that we can do that actually work extremely well and kind of change the game. So that's a big part of what I'm super excited to talk about today.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to expose the detection logic to the customer, it needs to be robust, right? For a lot of these email companies, like you get into their back-end systems where they're having to mess with the detections, it's not robust because it's not customer facing. So it makes sense that if you're going to build a product like this, and everything's going to be clear, well documented, robust, and well thought out, that does lend itself well to plugging agentic AI into it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when we deploy into a customer environment, we the first thing we do is we analyze a bunch of historical data and we establish a baseline of behavior, like what does good, what does bad look like, and then we start to analyze actual live mail and detect attacks. And so when we actually detect something that's bad, there's a bunch of ways that we show that to the analyst. We have our first layer of analysis that's being done here by one of our first agents that we actually released a couple months ago, which is our autonomous security analyst. And our autonomous security analyst is actually pretty rad and extremely effective at acting as like a layer one, layer two security analyst, triaging a attacker. The really unique thing about it is that it has so much of context of the environment, what good behavior looks like, what bad behavior looks like for that particular customer's environment. One of the challenges with doing email security at all is, and one of the reasons it's just it's been difficult to solve over the years, is every single environment is so unique and different that it's hard to take kind of like a one size fits all approach to building models and detection. So that level of context is immensely helpful. And so when you're actually like triaging a message, you can see this was actually an attack that we saw the last few days. It's a new technique that we've seen evolving here, which is abusing. It's like kind of hilarious actually. It's abusing Google Classroom. So it's like a legit service that's being abused, and it's ultimately a callback phishing attack. So traditionally, it's like very hard to detect these types of service abuse things because Google is a high reputation domain. Lots of legit traffic comes here. But with the level of actual thinking that an agent actually has, it's like resilient to these new types of techniques because it can reason about the message. And you can actually see what the thought process was of the agent as it went through this decision-making process. So it's been insanely valuable and also just a huge time saving for our customers.
Yeah, nice. So, yeah, but that's not the only agent you're going to show us today.
That's this is like, this has been, I don't want to like undervalue ASA. It's incredibly valuable and effective, but there's a lot of agents that are doing like alert triage. And so the really novel thing that we were launching, and by the time this video goes live, we would have launched, is our autonomous detection engineer. And one of the challenges with email security and just like the threat landscape in general is that obviously adversaries are incentivized to find new ways to achieve their objectives, right? They have the same types of constraints, and they've got incentives. And in particular over email, it's like a high ROI attack vector. And so we're seeing like no security solution is ever going to be perfect, right? And so we acknowledge that. We know that we're not going to be perfect. So the question is, what happens when you miss something? What happens when you get something wrong? And that's why we developed Ade, which is our autonomous detection engineer, which can do end-to-end autonomous threat response. And the really cool thing about it is that it works with ASA to basically generate a new detection, and then back test that detection over historical messages, analyze those messages to determine whether the new detection that it generated is going to be effective or not, iterate upon that until it gets to something valid and highly effective with high precision, and then it will present that to the user, and they have the ability to accept and deploy that to their environment with the full explainability of the thought process.
Well, I'm guessing I'm guessing the backtesting component of it as well. That's going to shake out if it's producing too many false positives for example,
That's
right?
that
Because you backtest it, it's like,
100%.
whoa, okay, hang on, we know these 10 messages here are good and it flagged them as malicious, so clearly the rule needs work.
Yeah, and it's not difficult to like take an LLM, like ask ChatGPT to build a signature or a rule or something in some language that it's familiar with. That's not the hard part. Generating a detection is not the hard part. It's the it's fine tuning the detection. It's ensuring that it's effective, and that's the secret sauce for Ade. That the way the platform's architected with the DSL at its core, and the fact that it can collaborate with ASA over historical data, is what the unlock is for us to basically self heal within each specific customer environment. And so, just like the one of the things that we hear or we've heard that our customers or before they use Sublime, one of their pain points has always been the rate at which their defenses can evolve with attacker adaptation. And the only thing that they could do is basically file a ticket and wait. And sometimes that takes weeks, sometimes that takes months. And with Ade, it takes hours, and it's fully fine tuned for your environment. And it's got the context, it's tailored, and you've got the full explainability of it. And you can
Nice.
see like one of the it's pretty sick. And
It is. I mean, it's nice when you're automating away an awful lot here, right? So, I guess a question I would have at this point is like, how much, once this is fully up and running, and I'm guessing you've got it, on site at a few, design partner
most
customers.
of our customers are running Ade right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question was going to be, in a live environment, which it is in, how much of the detection engineering work is then automated away by the AI?
100%.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's just like you set it up and off it goes.
Yes. If it doesn't generate something that's effective, then you just reject it. But it is designed to do 100% of the work. You just check it as an analyst. You still have the control at the end of the day, but it's designed to automate the whole thing away. And like the really important thing is that these aren't just like string matching rules, right? Like the DSL that we've created uses the state of the art types of, like, really it's table stakes for any type of threat detection problem of machine learning models, natural language understanding models, computer vision techniques, file explosion, QR code scanning. So you can see that the detection that Ade created is like leveraging our NLU classifier. It's looking for an invoice or a payment. And actually, I can pop open the attack here, and you can see it is that this is an attack that is an ISO attachment. Within the ISO, there's an LNK, and you can see how ASA is actually able to assess that that's malicious. So the way that this works within Sublime is, if we miss something, if we get it wrong, there's now a button that you click that just says run Ade job. And eventually that'll be fully autonomous, but today it's you just click a button and it goes off, it does its thing, and you can see it using NLU here. You can see it using the file explosion utility. So this is going to run recursive file with binary analysis on this. It's got FP reduction techniques baked in. The thing that just makes this possible is the DSL, but also the context that we have provided Ade in its own knowledge base. So we have given Ade pages and pages worth of domain knowledge that our detection and ML teams have in their heads on how do you craft really powerful detections in Sublime. And we fed it all of our documentation, we fed it all of our detection rule repositories. So it's got so much knowledge on how do you actually do this really, really well.
Now, a lot of the time when I speak to people who have agentic stuff, spinning up alert logic and whatever, they say it gets you 90% of the way there. and that you will often have a rule that's like not quite perfect and you need to sort of manually fine tune it. Is that the case here, or are you saying you've actually cracked that problem
We've solved the
because.
problem.
Yeah, okay. So it is just a full automatic feedback loop of this stuff. That's really cool.
Yes. Yes, that is the idea. And the way that we kind of think of these agents within Sublime is that what is a what is a job that a human does today, whether it's the Sublime, someone on the Sublime team, like our detection team or our ML team, or whether it's in our customers' teams, like in the SOC, their analysts, their threat hunters. So that's kind of how we think about these agents within the platform is what are humans doing today and what can we do with this determinism that we have with the DSL and the building blocks to actually automate that away with extremely high confidence.
So, what is it you're not automating in the platform? I'm guessing there's still going to be a lot of stuff, because email security is such a big thing, right? Like, it is such a big part of the day to day of security operations. And I'm guessing that when it comes to like someone clicked a bad link or someone reported a phishing message, like reporting phishing messages is such a big thing. Like, I'm guessing you've got some automations around that as well, but is there still some manual? I'm trying to get a feel for the day to day use of the platform.
Yeah, so we do automate user reports, and so it works exactly like our real time detection pipeline does. And the way that this actually works in the platform is that you configure an abuse mailbox, or we integrate with the native Microsoft button, for report phishing or the Gmail report phishing, and then we monitor that for any user reports. And we have this concept in the platform called automations, which is how you can actually configure Sublime to do things on your behalf. And one of those is user reports. So you've got the granularity basically of saying, hey, in this case, when one of our attack score models says a user report is spam, what do you want to do with it? You want to move it to the spam folder. So we give you that flexibility to say, hey, when Sublime thinks it's X, do Y. And ASA is also a big part of this. So every user report is analyzed by ASA. And to answer your question around what isn't automated, anything that's not high confidence, basically. So we have a fail safe here in our verdicts where we are very explicit in terms of our model thresholds, in terms of how we teach ASA to make decisions, which is if you're not confident, then we want you to tell us you're not confident. And that's when, as an organization, you can decide what do you want to happen when the automation verdict is not high confidence. So some of our customers want to elevate that to a human analyst. And so some small percentage of the total volume is what an analyst might review on a week to week or month to month basis.
But I mean, that's the whole point of technology like this, right? Is to take the amount of stuff that humans need to eyeball and dramatically reduce it. I mean, as you know, I work with companies that are doing AI like triage and whatnot in other contexts around like, SIEM and network events and whatever. But that's the idea. The principle's always the same, which is so much of this decision making is fairly simple and mindless. Just automate all of that away and save the curly ones for the humans. But, now that it's in production in a bunch of places, like what's the cadence? What's the difference before and after you've done the agentic stuff? What's the difference in the volume of stuff that people actually have to address? Do you even have any numbers around there, or even just anecdotally can say?
Our customers are saving multiple FTEs on what they were manually triaging. And many of our customers, like some of the largest banks that we work with, they get over 100,000 user reports a month. And historically, they weren't even making a dent in the user reports. They were just generating a huge backlog. And you plug Sublime in and it automates away 90x% of those. And you even have, for some of our customers, you have because you can decide what you want to happen, right? You've got the control. So you could even say for unknown verdicts, I want to show a warning banner, or I wanted to move to the spam folder. And so there's even these mitigation strategies where if you want a full set and forget experience, you can still mitigate risk without having to introduce the workload. But that's ultimately our mindset.
And I'm guessing once a user reports something that is determined then by ASA to be malicious, then it maybe kicks off a job to write a rule and backtest a rule for messages of that kind. Is that how it works?
Yes, yeah. So today, when ASUS determines something to be malicious from a user report, today you need to click a button to kick off ADE. What's coming next, probably like a month from now, is going to be a fully autonomous loop where a user reports, ASA classifies, ASA then passes it to ADE. ADE then generates a detection, passes it back to ASA to investigate the results of the backtest. So it's like a full collaboration happening internally.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked about that is because occasionally something will slip through, right? It's going to slip through the detection rules. You know, not every single inbound message is going to be evaluated by an agent, right? Whereas when a user selects something, it will be evaluated by an agent, and like bang, you're going to catch that within minutes or hours, as opposed to just like it being a spam report that nobody ever looks at because there were 100,000 that month.
So this is like actually a really key point, is that you can't just send, particularly in the email threat protect, like real-time email threat protection space, really any high volume, low latency problem is
You
that you
cannot LLM that. You
you
can't.
can't you
No.
can't just you can't just LLM that. And so the
It's
problem,
really funny what people think you can do, right? Like they think you could
yeah,
just take a mail gateway and like plumb it through to like ChatGPT or something and it's problem solved. And like,
yes,
no, that's not how it works.
exactly. And so this is really the key to solving that problem, is to have a multi-layered system where layer 1 is backed by something that is deterministic, that is low latency, that's really cheap. And in Sublime's architecture, that's our DSL. And when the detections flag something, they then can get elevated to a much smaller number, can then get elevated to an agent to do things with. And then you can, because layer 1 is effectively a language that a computer can speak, you get the full feedback loop that can happen. And that's how we're building this like fully self-healing autonomous system.
There's some irony here. I hope you understand that, you know, you created Sublime to be the one where you could get in and mess with it.
Yeah.
And now it's the one that you mess with the least.
Yeah, there is some irony in that. I will say that was always the plan from the beginning, but now we're here today, and we're getting closer to realizing that vision. Yeah,
I mean, I mean, a lot of your customers, as a result of where the company and the platform began, you got a lot of customers with detection engineering teams. Are they
yeah,
still cracking the
yeah.
hood after this AI stuff goes in, or are they just like, oh no, okay, it's handled. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, there are still like, there's still like some percent of use cases that our more advanced teams have that are not workflow driven in this way that Ade solves today. So for example, if you get a threat report on a new campaign that's being conducted by whoever APT, and like these are the techniques that are being used. And one of the things that some of our customers do is they will take that threat report, they'll turn it into an IOC based hunt. So one of the things you can do in Sublime is you can look retroactively. You can build detections. You can look retroactively through the entirety of your history, and this is using the same DSL that our detections use. So one thing they'll do with that threat report is that they will do an IOC based hunt. That's not really new or that interesting. And then they'll generate a behavioral hunt. So what are the actual tactics and techniques that are being used? Let's build a behavioral hunt for that. Were we ever targeted by this? If yes, remediate. We can remediate post delivery, then create a detection to go forward. So that use case isn't solved by Ade today, but we've got plans to basically create an ecosystem in Sublime to do that for you also. So we're gonna just more and more we're gonna be layering these platform capabilities to just make it easier to solve these really, really interesting problems. And over time, the the number of times you'll ever have to actually crack open the hood will go down. You'll always be able to do that, to be clear. You'll always be able to just go straight in and build your own and have full control. But we want to make that as easy as possible. We want to create like there's no reason to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I suppose like having a taxonomy driven approach too, which is where we started this demo, that's going to be handy for the, attacker behavior tracking, like when you've got a report full of TTPs, you'll be able to do that type of threat hunting, I guess, like a little bit easier than in other platforms.
Yeah, so we make this actually really easy. So let's say new whatever Iranian APT is using HTML smuggling to deliver credential theft attacks. So you can pivot from HTML smuggling if you want to actually hunt for this. And for any one of these, you can obviously pop open the hood and pivot directly to a hunt. So one of the cool things about this is that if there's detections or techniques that are already here, you never have to reinvent the wheel, right? You can leverage these as starting points, or we can even just kick off this hunt and see what we find.
We're going to wrap it up soon, but there's one more thing you wanted to tell us about, which is actually kind of funny, which is you've built some defenses against email bombs. I mean, we're talking about old school nuisance attacks, which kind of make life tough, if I'm honest. And you've actually been able to do something here. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so the really interesting thing about email bombs is that the extent of the actual messages within the bomb. So basically, the way this happens is that there's like a target, there's like a recipient that you take their email address, you'll like insert it into some service, and it'll go and sign them up for tens of thousands of different legitimate services. And the challenge with this is that these are not attacks. These are all like actually legit services, and the intent behind this is varying, but there's some actual like insidious ones where they just did like an account takeover and they want to push that email notification as far down as possible. Or sometimes they'll actually like they'll if they have like a stolen credit card, they'll make the purchase during the window of the bomb so it gets lost. And another thing we've seen is they'll send the bomb and then they'll call you like a voice phishing attack and pretend to be IT help desk and then deliver some malware on your machine. So there's actually like a bunch of different reasons why attackers are doing this recently. And
there's also the reason of like someone just annoyed you and you want to make their life
there's
hard.
Also that.
There's probably the most common use, but anyway.
There's also that. But when we've talked to our customers, they've gotten like directly followed up by like a Teams message from an attacker or like a phone call or something like that. So we built email bomb detection and prevention in Sublime. And the way we do it is that we establish a baseline of activity per mailbox per organization. And so when we see a giant spike, we're basically always tracking this the volume over time. And if we see a giant spike, then we'll basically wind back in time and say, okay, the bomb started over here, 9:22 a.m. We'll continue monitoring until it returns back to the baseline. And within the bomb period, we then run a series of automations within Sublime, which uses things like our topic modeling, like our NLU capabilities to weed out the actual messages in the bomb from legitimate emails that were received during the bomb. So we'll actually separate those out for you, and then you can see what did we actually auto remediate because we had high confidence that it was part of the bomb, and what was the legit mail that was received. So it makes incident response for this type of thing really easy, which is like historically has been just a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out too that because your platform understands what an inbox typically looks like for each user, that's how you've been able to come up with some very effective business email compromise detections and
Yeah.
preventions as well.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, well, Josh Kamju, thank you so much for joining me to walk us through the Sublime email security platform. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Pat. It's a lot of fun.